welcome in to episode 12 of the Young Entrepreneurs Network podcast, where we bring on guests from all around Glasgow, Scotland, and we basically break down why they've come into business, how they got into business, and all the lessons and learnings that we can take and apply to all the potential business owners out there, primarily kind of young entrepreneurs that are listening, can take a lot of this stuff and kind of apply it. And today we've got FBA Josh on. We will touch on at some point why there's no surname and stuff like that, which some people may be confused by, but yeah, we'll get into that in a good bit. But do you want to touch on a little bit about your journey, Josh, mate, and how you kind of got started in business?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me to start off.
No worries, mate.
So I've started doing Amazon FBA, which is hence the name FBA Josh. Just approaching about 2 years ago now. Reason for starting is quite a long-winded sort of story, I guess, but I've always done something on the side. It's a bit of like the sort of classic story, always sort of resold stuff. So I was into reselling a lot, reselling shoes, Yeezys, Supreme, in the sort of proper hype beast sort of days in like 2017, round about that time. So first started doing that. Always done something on the side of either being in school, college, working full time, always had something on the side. And then when I was working, I left my full-time job doing IT. So that's what I kind of come from. Got an IT background from school. That's what I was really the only thing I enjoyed in school. Went into college, done IT, and then went into a full-time job doing IT as well. Left my first full-time job doing IT and moved into Amazon. So I was working in Edinburgh, in both the corporate offices in Edinburgh, doing software development, IT infrastructure work, IT project management, anything like that. It was an apprenticeship program, similar to a degree apprenticeship program. So started working there. Never really had the intent of leaving. Not that I was going to stay there the rest of my life, but I was planning on actually just sticking with full-time sort of 9-to-5 career. The apprenticeship program that I was on sounded really, really good. It was really difficult to get into. Starting sort of salary for an apprentice was great, and I was really happy with the job and the sort of career progression that I thought I was going to have. And then it got to the point of like lockdown. My apprenticeship started falling apart. The sort of career path that I was meant to be going on didn't look very promising, and it was going to look more like I would end up going back into the previous job I left, which was a sort of entry level first line IT sort of support technician. So because of that, I was thinking, I sort of didn't even look into anything else at the time, any side hustles or any businesses. I actually just tried to see if I could fix anything in my career at Amazon. So I spoke to countless sort of managers, countless people from other departments, everything like that. Tried time and time again to get some progress in my job, but that wasn't looking too promising. Started looking into sort of a side hustle, but I did want something which was going to be my own business rather than just another stream of income, really. So I was looking at what sort of was more of a business rather than like reselling shoes. Yeah, you can turn it into a business, obviously, but it was more so just a side hustle for me in the past. So I was looking online, tried trading, crypto trading, lost a couple grand there. Wasn't too sustainable that, for me anyway. I wasn't too good at that one. So I was looking into something that was an actual full-time scalable business. Sort of was looking on Instagram at the time. Don't even think I had TikTok then, so it was mainly Instagram, YouTube, watching all the sort of classic YouTube videos, and came across Amazon FBA. Heard about it before, years before that, but I thought it was a sort of typical Forex guru type situation. Yeah. So avoided it, but then looked back into it more, and rather the sort of private label route of having your own brand, which is sort of everything I saw in the past, came across and watched a lot of the wholesale model, which is essentially buying other branded products and then you just selling them yourself. You're sort of a middleman. So looked into that, started researching it a bit myself on YouTube, Instagram, got TikTok, had a little look on it and that, and then got a pretty cheap course, about £50 course, not too much value there. Don't know what I was expecting from that, from a YouTuber that I watched, and then looked into getting an actual mentor. So rather than a pre-recorded, sort of cheaper course, looked into a full-time sort of mentorship program to work with someone to help me. Got a mentor and just started working from home whilst I was working from home from COVID. And then just started it alongside my full-time job initially. Bit of a long-winded one.
No, definitely, mate. I think you explained, you touched on a lot of good things there, mate. One of which you didn't necessarily touch on, but you got it to a stage where it was doing 25k a month, which is pretty spectacular to be doing that alongside, you know, something else, which is awesome, mate. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that for a lot of people, they like the kind of barrier of, like you said, Forex being like a bit kind of like dodgy, you know, a lot of kind of scam and all that kind of stuff. They let that be the kind of the barrier that stops them from going in and doing the deeper levels of research. Whereas you didn't allow that to kind of stop you from actually going in and kind of unraveling those first few steps. How did you go about kind of finding that first mentor as such, and actually being coached by him?
Yeah, so I was looking into it and I wanted something that was actually that I could work in my spare time and actually build up. So that's why I put a bit more effort into looking into something that I could do. Was just going through Instagram. Like, I, again, didn't really see too much on YouTube. A lot of the content even now on YouTube, but more so back then when I started, was all American based, and it was all targeted towards private label. So it was just going through Instagram, seeing, you know, other people doing well at it, showing actual pictures of stock, showing pictures of sales, showing pictures of profit, things like that, having a little look at Trustpilot reviews, and just selected someone that I thought would help me a lot get started. I've tried loads of stuff myself in the past, which just never went well. Reselling went really well, but apart from that, nothing else has been too good, the trading and everything like that. So I just thought, it makes complete sense to have a mentor. I know now, and you know, a lot of people always think, well, why would you pay someone, but why is the mentor teaching you if they're doing so well at it themselves? I know a lot of people think like that, but for me, I'd rather pay someone 500, 1,000, even £2,000 to learn from years of their mistakes and thousands of pounds that they've lost out on and made mistakes for, to learn from that and fast track the process. Listened to something recently which said, you know, you've got mentors in school, which teachers, got mentors in university, which are lecturers. Even at Amazon, when I was on my apprenticeship, I had a sort of dedicated mentor. And obviously you've got management, Amazon themselves, and all these companies have, you know, mentorship programs. So it's the same sort of thing. And I just thought that would help me fast track the process. Obviously, still a lot you need to do yourself. You're just going to have a mentor and then start making money, but it just fast tracked the process.
Definitely, mate. I think like having a mentor in any one of those skills avenues that like you're diving into, like FBA, I think is absolutely required. Even in business, man, like when I think about prior to when I had a coach, like there was so many unanswered questions that I was willing to just see how it kind of played out. And when I started to realize that that was a matter of me playing not to lose rather than playing to win, I realized that that was the kind of, when you see a lot of people that are fast tracking their success, it's because of that. When you see people making ridiculous amount of money in such a short space of time, it's because they fast tracked it through something like a mentorship or a coaching program. And I think there's a lot of kind of bad rep / potential trust issues in there. And it requires a lot of your own due diligence to do so. And then only at that point can you actually just make the judgment yourself, mate. And what did you kind of see? Obviously you said like the Trustpilot kind of reviews and stuff like that, but what was it that you seen from that mentor that made you like think that he was, or she was, the right one for you?
Yeah, no, I've actually I had the original mentorship, and then since then, because I've had success from it and I saw that it actually was something that was worth the money, I've bought, you know, various courses and other mentorships, one-on-one sort of consultations as well, to combine everyone's knowledge. But I just kind of feel like I'm good sort of judge of character, so I could just tell that they were genuine. A lot of the time you might think that anyway, so your own, but I just had a gut feeling that what they were doing was sort of legitimate. Now there's obviously a lot in FBA and every sort of niche, there's a lot that you have to do your due diligence on, because sometimes it may be never even sold on Amazon and they're teaching you how to sell on Amazon. But yeah, I just had a good feeling about it. Really looked at, you know, they had a lot of feedback, not just on Trustpilot, but just, you know, testimonials from people, not necessarily video ones or anything like that, just reviews, people sending them messages, things like that. And I thought the worst thing that could happen would be I would lose the money that it cost me to mentor them. And that would be the worst thing. And don't want to obviously lose money, but the amount that I paid for them to mentor me, if I'd lost it, I would have just learned my mistake and moved on from it. I was willing to risk the money to learn the business model, basically.
Definitely, mate. No, I couldn't agree more, man. And obviously you're kind of transitioning into the kind of Amazon software job. It's a very interesting concept because you're able to, leverage your connections obviously within there to obviously help fast track some of the process within FBA, but you're able to see that infrastructure, the inside of something that was not many people would get to see. What was your kind of experience in that kind of environment?
Yeah, so well, I worked in it was one office in Edinburgh, which is the Amazon Development Centre. So that is the sort of software development centre of I think the UK, if not obviously Scotland. And then they had a customer service centre in there as well. It was across like 3 floors, and then they moved into another office as well. So they've got 2 offices now in Edinburgh, and it was just to see the size of the business just in Scotland. I never got to see too much of the fulfillment centres, which is obviously what Amazon FBA will be, but I did get a tour of one, and then just to see the one in Dunfermline actually, which is like the return hub of the UK. So even if you're buying something as a customer on Amazon and you live in London and you send it back, it's still actually getting sent up to the one in Dunfermline. But just to see the size of it, it's just like mental in person. You can get virtual tours online. I think once, I don't know if they're open now, they should be, you can actually go as like a visitor to go through them and get a tour of it.
Okay.
But just to see the size of that, because at that point, I think I'd passed the point of doing 25,000 a month. But once I got VAT registered, my wholesale products took a hit in terms of the margin. Yep. So I was getting a bit demotivated at the time, thinking, is it saturated? Everyone says it's saturated. Is it possible? And then going in there and seeing the size of it, and that's one out of the whole of the UK, kind of gave me a bit of reassurance that if the building's this big and it's got this many products in it, then it has to be a sustainable business model. But yeah, working at the company, just seeing this, the size of it, as I was telling you when we first spoke about just the amount of money that Amazon have, like that they spent on the offices in Edinburgh, it's just like mental. So the size of the business was one thing. And then just again, I wish now, I realised at the time how valuable it was actually working at the company to potentially benefit your FBA business, just having connections. Because a lot of mine were obviously just in the IT sort of space, organisation. But just having someone on the inside that could help you is worth more than anything, really.
Definitely. I mean, I think like any sort of inside scoop, anything that's going to fast track your process. And also, when I do speak to any individuals or any past clients that maybe have been the FBA side of things, like there's been time periods where they've had 2 to 3 months where they're waiting on a reply, or they're waiting for verification, or they're waiting for some sort of process that someone needs to just flip a switch or review it and just tell you whether it's okay or it's not. And I used to feel really bad for them, man, because it was like something that was taking so long that was just going to be so easy for them to just say yes or no. And as a result, they could move forward, mate. But a lot of times they were stuck in kind of one place.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens with like I was waiting for a VAT refund from Amazon. So basically every seller, once you sign up as either an individual, sole trader, limited company, you'll get charged VAT on your Amazon fees. Okay. So completely different to being VAT registered and obviously paying VAT on your sales, but you'll get charged 20% VAT on all your Amazon fees for every single different type of fee Amazon charge you. But there actually is a way around that to get that removed. I think the reasoning for it is the entity of Amazon that charges you that VAT is based in Luxembourg. So there's some tax implication of why they're not actually meant to, but they will continue to unless you ask them to remove it. Okay. So it's a pretty straightforward process to actually get the VAT removed on fees, but I didn't know about it whatsoever until, well, quite far down the line. Yep. So when I initiated getting VAT exempt on fees, so I no longer had to pay that, and increase my margins by a decent amount. But then I was entitled to a VAT refund. I think it was about £2,000 just on the VAT paid on fees at the time. And I waited, I think, 3 months for that. And then the reason for it is I got like a support specialist to help me and paid them. And they must have had connections of some form, which sped up the process, because essentially your ticket would just go into a never-ending queue at Amazon where people are just clicking on it, pasting a template, and it goes to the next person. Whereas this actually had someone deal with it, and it was their job to fix it. And then I got it very quickly after that.
So a lot of like the huge companies, even like TikTok, for example, or any sort of platforms where there's paid ads, like we've seen it multiple times where something gets raised. Like for example, our TikTok account got banned, or it like got like under review or anything of that nature. And as a result, we couldn't do ads for a certain time frame. And then after it was flagged, it took us ages to even get it to a place where it was sweet. We got back on. Then it got flagged again on the same video that had already been reviewed for. And our account was just gone, man. And we had to put in so many tickets, so many messages, just to actually get to speak to like a human to actually
Yeah.
review it properly, to see that there was nothing wrong. It was because we used like actual figures in the actual ads where we spoke about members up at 275k a month. They labeled it as some sort of like, I don't even know what it was. It was some sort of like pyramid marketing thing that they kind of labeled it as, because we were using actual numbers. Whereas if somebody actually, an actual human, sat there and reviewed it, they would have seen that it wasn't. But you're not able to gain access to anyone like that without having to go through a million different people.
That's something that I've kind of put together now, is I've got like a directory of email addresses, even for something like the VAT refund. So if someone came to me and said, if I was helping someone or someone I've taught or something like that, I would just give them that email address, and it'll actually get reviewed by a human rather than a bot or just a never-ending queue. And the difference in like the amount of time it'll take to get VAT exempt, or your refund on VAT, or your account's banned or anything like that, actually having like the right point of contact compared to going through seller support is like night and day difference. Like you might wait a couple of days compared to months or never, probably never.
And I think that's something that's important, mate, in terms of like your network. You've expanded this directory / even just your network as a whole, mate. In what ways has your network served you out with that kind of directory that you're touched on just now?
Yeah, just Amazon as a whole, and just sort of business wise. I've been to like one networking event, which was good because it wasn't just for Amazon sellers, but the majority of people there were Amazon sellers, which was good and bad because there was a lot you could learn from everyone. But then it got to the point where no one could really talk about much because you don't want to disclose your products to people, which you can get into. But that was really useful. And then just connecting with people through Instagram and things like that. Now I've got a handful of people which, if I don't know the answer to it, or if I don't have the experience in it, I'll message them and they'll know it. Not just necessarily for Amazon, but just for business sense in general. Like it was about a month or so ago, I got a phone call from my accountant, and they were like, well, they told me about 2 months ago, your accounts aren't going to be due till X month. I was like, oh, I've got ages, don't have to worry about that. And then I just got a phone call at like 4 p.m. one day, and they're like, you need to pay your tax today. And I'm like, right, okay, no notice whatsoever. And then, I just phoned someone that's, I'd class as a good connection and a good friend now. I phoned them and asked their opinion on what the accountant suggested to do to sort of reduce my tax. Because I was like, this just sounds a bit odd, all to happen in one day, and now they're suggesting to do this to reduce your corporation tax. And I phoned them, I said, is this even legal? Like, doesn't sound very legal to me. And they said, he knew someone who had done the same thing, which was just like, paying someone, having someone on payroll for your company, or paying yourself, and to do the most tax efficient ways possible. I was like, oh, it is. It just, because it was all within one day, it was a bit much at one time. Yep. So just having people to phone or message for any issue that you have, they'll message me for things they've not dealt with. I'll message them for things they've not dealt with, and then you basically know everything you need to know. So really, really valuable.
Definitely. I mean, what would be your kind of advice for someone looking to kind of build their network up?
I'd say, well, if you can get involved in any networking groups, any networking events, go to them. Everyone's going to a networking event to talk to people and be friendly. That's something I wasn't too sure about. Like, I went to London for one myself, so I was like a bit sort of nerve-wracking. Don't really know too many people there, but no one's going to go to a networking event and not be open to speak to you, because that's why they're there. So, go to any events as possible, and then just message people. Like for FBA, for example, I would just go on Instagram, create a Instagram separate from my personal one for FBA, and I would just message anyone that I saw doing well, have a chat to them, see if I could help them in any way, see if they could help me in any way. And then was messaging people like last summer, because I saw them running ads for wholesale, which I've never done before. I always thought running ads on Amazon was solely for your own brand, for private label. So that was something completely new to me. So I messaged them to try and learn off them. Just kept messaging them, pestering them till they replied to me, and now I'm good friends with them and helped them, and they've helped me a lot. So just message people. Got nothing to lose. The worst thing that'll happen is they don't reply to you, which might not be the best, but it's not, nothing to worry about.
Definitely,
so I'd just say message as many people as possible.
Definitely, man. I think that's a lot of, it's really valuable advice, because it makes it simple. That first step is simple to actually, take that first step. Moving forward, message some people, get to know them, get to know about their business, and then from there, like rapport and connections. When I look at like over the next decade, man, like how our relationship is going to evolve through each touch point, each conversation that we have, each thing that we talk about. The rapport and the trust. We're so early on in our journey, being in our early 20s. decade from now, the relationship we would have built, those sort of opportunities, those sort of problems as well that arise, knowing that you can pick up the phone to somebody. I think it's something that's so invaluable, man. You can't put a price on it. Like when you've got people in your corner that can kind of help you move forward, mate. Which is awesome, man. And also how we met was through just a connection network, which is fantastic, mate. And now we're here shooting an episode.
I know, all in a short time as well. That's why I think it's just like there's nothing to lose doing it, even if it's for a job, not necessarily just for a business. Like my missus does law at university, and she messages people all the time on LinkedIn. Goes to sort of networking events or social events for that as well. And then the amount of people now that she can message about a set topic if she's not sure on it, to help her with her like essays or dissertation or whatever the case is, even for like jobs, like so valuable. Having LinkedIn is just love a bit of LinkedIn. It's extremely useful. Definitely. I think it's something that's underrated, that people just take for granted, that you can literally just message people and you never know what it could lead to.
Yeah, you never know what it could lead to. Absolutely, mate. So obviously we touched on a bit around kind of FBA, a bit around people selling stealing products and stuff like that. What are some of the potential, we'll touch on positives and downsides. We'll start with the downsides, do bad first. What are the kind of downsides of FBA for people to be aware of?
Yeah, there's quite a few, to be honest, and I think obviously it's something that you won't see too much of online because no one's going to promote the negatives of it. It's usually just the same with everything, but there is quite a lot of negatives with FBA. I'd say more so for wholesale than private label. I've recently started private label, so don't have too much experience with it, but the competition is the main thing. Is no one's really your friend if you're doing the same thing in terms of wholesale with Amazon, because you can't all sell the same products. If 100 people sell the same product, the sales are split between 100 people. Obviously no one wants that. Everyone wants it to themselves. So competition is the main sort of issue, I would say, with wholesale compared to retail and online arbitrage, which is if you're just going into, say, like Sainsbury's, scanning the product, seeing if it's on clearance, buying 5 of them that's on the shelf and selling it on. There's obviously a really low barrier to entry with that. You could literally start with £20, £50, £100, whereas wholesale, there's a slightly higher barrier to entry. You'd probably need to start with sort of minimum 500, but that's still pretty low. You're looking at about 1,000 to 2,000 ideally to start with. But still, for a business, it's still quite a low barrier to entry. So I think the main problem is competition. Even if they aren't doing it on purpose, you might find a really good product that you might spend weeks or months trying to get an account open with the brand or the distributor. You've finally got the product, you've ordered them, probably lost count of the amount of times that I found a great product, ordered them, prepped them, sent them into Amazon, and then in the 3 to 5 days it takes to get them checked in, there's 5 new people that have jumped on it and cut the price by £1 or whatever before I've even started selling it. So yeah, probably competition is the main issue or downside. Second one's probably Amazon themselves. As we're talking about, seller support is notorious for being no support whatsoever, providing no support. Customer service at Amazon is probably one of the best about, whereas the seller support is terrible. So if you've got any issues where you've sent in a box that's too heavy, you've got an IP claim on your account, intellectual property claim, something's happened, your products have been damaged, something like that, you're not getting too much help on it unless you know the right points of contact for it. One of my friends just sent in 1,000 units of his private label product, which is like £5,000 worth of stock, and it randomly just got marked all 1,000 units as defective, broken, unfulfillable, which he then had to pay to get them sent back to him. So that's one thing you can always do. You can always get the stock sent back to yourself or like where your unit is, but it'll cost about 60p per product to get sent back. So obviously 1,000 units, 60p just to get them sent back is not great. So just Amazon themselves in terms of support, they can be so annoying about trying to get your account approved. Again, same friend, he had £60,000 worth of cash stuck in his Amazon account because I think he either changed his bank account or changed his address, and he misspelled his name when just typing in the name on the card, and instantly Amazon froze his account with 60 grand in. And you can imagine how frantic you would be in that situation. Definitely. Or Amazon as a competitor themselves, there's nothing stopping Amazon really selling the product themselves. But obviously there is so many products on Amazon, that's why they need the third-party sellers. But I've been on listings before that, I've sold for 6 months or more, made thousands off them per month, and then Amazon's jumped on, got a better price. They're obviously not paying their own Amazon fees, or they can buy that many that they're getting a way better price than you could ever try and get. And then you just, at some points, can't compete with Amazon, unfortunately.
Yep. You're then competing against a monopoly, something that is fucking huge.
Yeah.
On the topic of kind of the competition front to begin with that you first touched on, how did you overcome that kind of problem?
I think when I was first starting out, obviously I didn't have tons and tons of capital, so there's not too much you can do. The best thing when you're starting out is to be patient with it. So if you've got a good product that's making, good margin, good profit, and 5 new sellers jump on it, it's just patience. You just need to wait for them to sell out. Eventually they will, unless they're huge companies, or sometimes you just have to cut your ties with a product. Patience is a really good one starting out, and then it gets to the point, even when you go VAT registered and your margins take a hit straight away, because you now have to pay VAT on your sale price, you're then at the point that you've obviously done over £85,000 in revenue, or towards £100,000 in revenue, so you've built up a bit more capital. So compared to a brand new seller who's maybe starting with £500, you've got way more capital to buy 1,000 units of a product that they can only buy 50 of or 100 of. So you'll end up actually getting better buy prices. Again, another one to just help with competition overcoming it, when your seller account grows, you get more reviews as a seller. So not product reviews, but they're actually, customers are reviewing you as a third-party seller. And then once you get more reviews, it's hard, you get a higher percentage of the buy box. So when you actually go onto Amazon, click on a product, there might actually be 10 people selling it if it's a branded product, for example, but it's whoever's best priced or most competitively priced, quickest delivery time, and then the amount of reviews they have as a seller as well. So if you've got 500 reviews because you've been selling for a couple of years compared to someone who's got one, even if you're both priced at £9.99, you will get the buy box over them the majority of the time. So there's nothing the other seller can do except from undercut you. And then probably one of the most important ones is just building relationships with your suppliers. If you can meet them in person, that's always a good one, because they're going to have hundreds of people contacting them. But if you live locally to them and you've built up a good relationship with them and you can meet them for a coffee, they'll probably help you out with pricing. Or if you're just spending that much money with them, if you're spending thousands or tens of thousands of pounds a month with them compared to someone who's just trying to get an account open with them, you're going to be favored, you're going to get stock, you're going to get better pricing. So definitely a long game though to overcome it.
Definitely. I think it's something that, like, when I think about building relationships, there's something that is, I guess, a bit alien to me about building a relationship with a supplier where it's just over the phone or over the email exchanging. Like, I always think over the phone you're still talking to them, but like getting to meet them face to face, or at least doing a Zoom call, or at least you're at least able to see more, you're able to understand more, you're able to trust more as a result. And I think that's something that, I don't know, a lot of people overlook maybe a little bit, but also for me, that'll be one of my barriers to not coming into it, because of having to deal with suppliers and having to deal with people that are maybe in a position where they're just representing a company as well. They're just, or maybe if you have obviously straight to the connect of actually running the brand, then also that'd be a bit different. But like, people, I've heard stories, I think you've touched on some of them as well, where you'll have a connection with a supplier or a specific person within that brand, and then they leave. And you have to rebuild again, and it's like, that must be a ball, man.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing. I always thought, how can you build a good relationship with a supplier that you've, like you said, either never met, never spoke to on the phone, or it's not their company, so they're less likely to be sort of emotionally involved in it, I guess. But just speaking to them, like, I've got a really good relationship actually with a supplier, which I did buy wholesale products from and sold them for quite a while, and now we're trying to work with them exclusively. So I would be the only seller for them on Amazon. So rather than 5-6 sellers, they would just cut out all, the middlemen there, just sell it all to me, and I would manage everything. But that's like a long game. But that's been over like multiple Zooms, helping them out for free. They actually sent me a bottle of whiskey because they said I've been like a bit of a consultant to them for free. But it is definitely a long game, and you're going to probably have to, and in terms of that, for like exclusivity, where you're going to be the only seller, it is worth it in the long run, because there is sort of no competition at that point.
Yeah.
But you would have to provide a lot of free value up front, and it is very, very time consuming. That's probably the best relationship I have with a supplier in terms of a friendliness level.
What did it kind of take to get it to that level?
Well, I was buying a couple thousand units a month of their wholesale products. So it wasn't their own brand. They're the UK distributor for an American brand. So I was buying a couple thousand units. So I was kind of slightly ranking my way up in their business customers in terms of who's spending, a decent amount with them. And then I started buying their own branded products from them again. So it was just adding on to, I think the main thing that's going to get you recognized by the supplier is just spending money with them.
Yeah.
Especially if they're sort of a sales manager or an account manager, they'll probably get bonuses based on their targets, how much they can sell. So it'll always be in their interest to treat you well and have a good relationship with you.
Yeah.
And then after that, I reached out to them with a sort of proposal of why they should just sell to me and not sell to 10 different people. And then the main reason was it was their own brand, and the sort of RRP and the brand reputation was getting a bit trashed on Amazon. Everyone would undercut each other. One day the product might be £5, next day it might be £7, day after it might be £4. But, compared to if you're buying a brand on their own website or in a shop, if you go in one day or you go on the website one day and the next day it's going to probably be the same price. Yeah. So I reached out to them with a proposal for that to optimize their listings, so get them better product images, write their descriptions better. Everything like that. So it took me a couple hours to put together the proposal for them that I fired over to them, and then they sort of saw that I had an interest in actually helping them. Yeah. And it's been a long time in the making. I think it's been about 8 months of emails back and forth every now and again.
Yeah.
To try and build it.
Because I think people kind of struggle to take that step to send even a proposal of, say you're already working with someone, say you're doing any business for any example. You want to offer them more, or you want to do more work with that specific client because you believe you can get them better results. But people always struggle to kind of take that step because people think that they're just trying to, they don't want it to come across like we're just trying to make more money. People want to make sure it comes across in the right way. What would be your kind of advice to people in terms of putting that proposal across to someone?
Yeah, I've always thought that as well, because I've always been able to tell if someone's properly trying to sell me something, and it is just coming across salesy with the intent of just making money compared to actually helping them. Yep. And I think the reason it didn't come across like that too much, and the reason why I tried to not stress it is I was just showing them how their brand could actually improve on Amazon, showed them a competitor of what they're doing and saying, you don't have to work with me to do this, you could go do this yourself. But it was more of a here's how you could improve it. I've included all the information for free. I've not fixed it for them because I couldn't. Yeah. But I showed them how to fix it, what to do to actually fix, improve their Amazon listings. And I've done all that for free. So they have more of a sort of intent to be like, well, he's just provided us with all this valuable information, and he's not asked us for any money. He's not trying to sell us anything. It's just, trying to work with them. And I've always tried to say that, and I would actually prefer to do that than just be a reseller or like a middleman. I would actually like to work with a brand to know that I'm providing value to them and help them grow their brand on, say, Amazon, compared to just reselling it for a profit. Yep. So I think that was a good way to come across that I'm actually trying to provide value for free up front. And then obviously if they did decide to go ahead with it, then I would profit from it. You're obviously going to profit, you have to profit from it at one point, but as long as it's not just upfront, I think that's what kind of helped spark the relationship a bit.
Yeah, I think that kind of free offering, especially when you're kind of starting at the beginning, you can be, positioned as someone that maybe holds less authority or less power, having that kind of free outlet of just showcasing that you're willing to go above and beyond for them. It can serve you incredibly well, but also ensuring down the line when to start leading with authority as opposed to just doing things for free as well. There is a time to kind of switch that up, which I think is really valuable. I think to contribute to this conversation as well, for me, it's probably a guarantee. Like, see, when somebody sends me a proposal and there's a guarantee on it, and it's almost like risk free if we look at like the offers we have within the network. Someone comes in at our monthly retainer, for example, if they're not happy by the end of that first 30 days, they get their retainer back and then they get a double on top of it. And that's something that it's completely risk-free. Actually, it's more money in your pocket than anyone else's. And I think that's something that when we look at like $100 million offers by Alex Hormozy, that was explained really well in that book, man, why an offer, a guarantee just makes it sound so damn compelling because it's risk-free. The only risk is your time at that point. and you can weigh up whether or not that guarantee even aligns with it, and you're able to kind of move forward, man.
Yeah, it was a very similar situation there, because the worst thing is I've spent the time doing all this for them for free, and if they don't like it, if it doesn't do well for them, they can just revert the changes back. They can keep the changes for free, which will naturally increase their sales on Amazon. There's no money involved from them. You're basically offering it up front for free, and if it goes well, then they don't even have to pay you a fee. They're just selling you their products, which you're paying for anyway, but you're going to profit and benefit from it as you would be the only seller. So it's pretty much the exact same situation there. I guarantee.
No, I love that, mate. I love that. So what are kind of some of, we've touched on a good few of the negatives. We've also touched on kind of the middle ground as well. Some positives already, but what are kind of the positives that stand out to you about FBA?
Yeah, so main reason I got into it was I did see it as a scalable business model. I didn't think there was too much upfront risk or cost. Obviously, as I said, you could probably start wholesale with, if you were just starting it without a mentor or anything like that, you could start with £500. That'll cover your original test orders. That'll cover you setting up your Amazon account. That'll cover your softwares and everything like that. So it was fairly risk-free. I just lost about £3,000 on crypto before and trading. So I wasn't prepared to, invest thousands and thousands of pounds. But I just thought it was extremely scalable. Yes, there's obviously all the Amazon fees involved, but you are paying for a service. So it is fairly hands-off when the stock's at Amazon. Obviously, the hard work and the groundwork is sourcing the products, building the relationship. Once you've got the product sent to you, you'll need to prep them. But after that point, it's fairly hands-off. You'll send it to Amazon. You don't have to manually go to the post office or, get a collection booked in every day to send orders to the customers. Amazon will handle it for you. The amount of traffic that you can generate for free on Amazon for wholesale, obviously private label with your own brand is going to be different. You will have to spend money on advertising, but with wholesale, you can generate hundreds of thousands of page visits to that product a month for completely free. It's already selling. It's already gaining organic traffic. You're selling a brand that's built up their brand reputation and story and packaging and, reviews and everything like that for 10, 20 years. If you're selling something like L'Oreal on Amazon, for example, everyone knows what L'Oreal is. Most people do. You don't have to put in any money into the marketing, the design, anything like that. You're just selling something that people already like. You're using software on Amazon that shows that the product's already selling well, and your part is to find it for a cheaper price that you have margin at. So it was something that you could always work on in your spare time. You don't have to work at it 9 to 5. You could work at it in the evening, or whatever time suited you. You could always source products, and it was just fairly sort of scalable, I guess. I managed to scale it to quite a good point whilst working a full-time job as well. I don't think that would have been possible if I was obviously having to ship the orders myself. So it was a scalable business whilst working full-time, and then obviously not working full-time, you can scale it. With wholesale as well, I think it's a really good starting point. Again, because of the barrier to entry is not too, difficult for everyone. Most people could save that up over the course of a couple of months to get started. And then from that point, you can use wholesale to, again, because there's not too many upfront costs such as advertising. You don't know if it's going to be a trial and error. You're going to know what products are selling. You're just going to build up the profit from that to use it as a sort of stepping stone into other areas, even if it's not Amazon, could be property, could be your own brand, could be whatever you want to do. Or you could use it to funnel into private label, which is what I'm attempting to do just now.
Definitely, mate. Well, I think something that's not really touched on that much, mate, because I think when you're in the beginning of a business journey, it's just about making cash. It's like people will do anything they can in order to make that cash. And in the form of, let's say, coaching, mentoring, whatever it may be, a lot of people will start with like one-to-one, which is the most time demanding form of coaching in a one-to-one aspect. It's something that's not really scalable, and when you've not got something that's not that scalable, it becomes pretty hard in order to come out of that potential, I guess, like hole that you're in with scaling. And I think for me, when I look at like Young and Lazy, the initial thought process behind that was that I wanted a time lean business model. I wanted something that didn't require, 10 hours a day. For example, when I look at like streaming side of things, I streamed 5 to 10 hours a day every day for 250 days in a row. Like, I want to be able to do that in a way that actually serves me in the real long term. And I think what you've touched on there with FBA, something that I've not really heard anyone really touch on in a way like that, where the infrastructure at Amazon, the brand's already been built they're like huge levers that allow for you to really propel forward with almost like minimal time, man, which I think
Yeah.
is really insightful.
Yeah, I think the most time consuming bit, like with wholesale, is obviously sourcing the products, but you don't have to do it 10 hours a day. You could do it 2 hours a day and just build that up. As long as you're being semi consistent with it, then you will eventually find a product. You might have days where you spend 2 hours and find nothing. You might have a day where you spend half an hour and find 5 products. Completely depends. And you, like I said, you're leveraging Amazon's infrastructure of the fulfillment network, and then you're using the brand's reputation and already existing sort of customer base. If it's a replenishable like makeup or something like that, there's always going to be people buying it again. You don't have to try and bring those customers in. So I think it's a really good stepping stone to build up, like even like original like business sort of knowledge. You don't have to be like, know everything about business to start it. You kind of learn it as you go. There's not too much to sort of do. You just learn it as you're going along, and then you can use the money to do whatever you want with. Even if you don't want to, sell on Amazon anymore, you want to do something on your own. You've managed to build up money with, I'd say, minimum risk, because when I first started, I would know if a product was going to sell by vetting it, checking the reviews, checking it's got a good seller's rank, using software to estimate how many times it sells a month. And then I would go buy a really small amount of it when I first started. I'd maybe buy 30 units of it, which could range from, it might be £300, might be £100, depending on the product cost. I would sell it or send it into Amazon, and I would see how accurate the software is at predicting the sales. So if it's, the software saying it sells 100 times a day, and there's 2 sellers, on average, each seller should get about 50 sales each, depending on their reviews and everything like that. So then I would send in 100 units or 30 units, usually starting out, and I'd say, right, how long is it actually going to take me to sell 30 units? And then if I would sell them all in a day, I would then be able to go, right, well, it clearly sells, there's margin there, so I can go order a week's worth, and I'd order a week's worth, I'd sell that, and then I'd order 2 weeks worth. I would just build it up slowly. I think because I'd lost quite a bit of money before starting Amazon, I was a bit more careful with it. And then even if it, worst comes to worst, you would always that's why I always operate at usually a 30% return on investment starting out. So, you've got 30% sort of leeway there for the price to decrease, and you can just sell it break even and get your money back, which isn't great, but it's not like you have to invest £10,000 into something and you don't know if you're going to return anything from it. So it is a really good way to get started. The reason I wanted to not move away from it, but focus on other areas of Amazon, is because it would never be a sellable business. It's quite hard to sell a wholesale business because you don't own any of the brands. You have the relationships with the suppliers, which is valuable. You've got the knowledge, and you've got, maybe the connections with the suppliers, but like you said, if they leave, then there's not too much you can do there. So I wanted to move into something, or trying to move into something which, you can sell it. There is an exit of a private label business. There's plenty of private label businesses that have sold. Might be a bit more less time consuming as well. Whereas wholesale, it's sort of constantly trying to source products. If you just get sort of comfortable with what you've got, which I done a good few times when I was working full time, thinking, oh, well, I've got, 15, 20 products. They're making enough money. It's quite cash intensive. I'll lay off sourcing a bit. If anything happens to those products, you're then not back at stage one, but you're having to try and source it over again. So just trying to build something that's a bit more long term, whereas you can sell it for the next 5 years, or if you want to exit the business, then you can. But I think it's a great first business for someone to start.
Yeah, for anyone not coming in or not new about FBA or anything of that nature, what is, in its simplest definition, like private label?
Private label essentially is buying products, unbranded products from China, finding a demand for it on Amazon. Usually they are already selling as well, so you'll have a different type of competition. But you're finding a product, say it's a microphone stand, you're going on to usually Alibaba or trying to find a supplier in China for it. It'll often be unbranded. Usually you have to buy a larger amount of them. You then go design a brand, a brand name, logo, everything like that, trademark that brand name, ask the supplier to print your brand name or logo onto that product, design the packaging if you want to. You would then buy that from China. You would then send it into Amazon, but you would have to create all of your own listing. So it's basically like your own store on Amazon, or your own website for your brand, but it's hosted on Amazon essentially.
Okay.
Is what it would be. So, you might have a range of microphone stands that you've called Josh's microphone stands, and you go onto Amazon, you're going to decide what the product images are, how many there is. Well, it's usually 7, but you can decide what's included in them. You can decide what the title's going to be, what the description is. There's usually a bit at the bottom where you can include some brand design and A+ content. Whereas wholesale, you're just going to sell on a listing that's already made, so there's not all the work that goes into that, and then you're just selling the product on for a profit. You're more sort of reseller or a middleman, whereas private label, it's your own brand, but it's hosted on Amazon's platform essentially.
You basically have more control overall. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot more control. You can determine the selling price of it, obviously, and aligned with the competition. But for example, Amazon just put their seller fees up in March. So for a wholesale product, your margin might be 20% profit margin. Amazon now put their fees up, it might now be 16%, for example. Yeah. You can't then just be like, oh, well, I'll just up my price by 4%, because then all the other sellers on that listing would have to do the same. And a lot of the time they won't. Whereas in private label, you could be like, right, Amazon's going to increase their fees in March. I'll slowly increase my prices from January to get to the point by March, my margin's the exact same.
Love that, man.
Yeah, got a lot more control over it. And then with private label as well, yes, you'll probably start on Amazon, but you can try and sort of fade away from it to sell on your own Shopify store, sell through, get an Instagram page for it, everything like that. And you can sort of mold it more into your own brand compared to being solely reliant on Amazon as a stream of income.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, man. That makes a lot of sense. I'm getting so much education here today, man. I'm literally I'm kitted out. I think FBA has never really even been explained to me in this manner, man.
Yeah.
And even just from a host perspective, I'm understanding so much more about it. And the kind of topic of FBA, what has been the kind of most rewarding aspect of that kind of business?
I'd say just being able to make money whilst not having to trade your time for it straight away. So you're putting the initial work in, the initial hours in, trying to source the products, building the relationships with suppliers, prepping it and everything like that. And then when you've done that originally to start off, but then once it's at Amazon, it's again semi hands off, where you could be sleeping, you could make money. It's not completely passive, because you're gonna have to do some work to obviously keep on top of the pricing and do the original work to source it. But once it's at Amazon and it's selling, I was obviously at work and I would be making money from selling on Amazon whilst I'm actually in the office doing work. Or again, you can wake up and might not be, you're not going to wake up and have like £1,000 profit. Well, you might, but unfortunately I never had that. But you could wake up and I remember like one day going into work, after a good few months of selling on Amazon, I woke up in the morning, I'd made about £70 to £100 profit, and I'd literally just woke up at 7ish in the morning on my way to work. And that's that kind of shows you what you can turn it into.
Definitely.
So you're not having to trade, you're not on an hourly rate essentially, which is kind of what you want.
Which gives you massive upside, which makes a lot of sense, mate. In terms of the challenges that you faced, opposite of the kind of rewards aspect, what are kind of been some of the most daunting challenges that you've had to?
Going VAT registered was the main one. That was the most challenged one for me, mainly because I left it too late. I got an accountant quite late on in the process. I didn't fully understand how it would affect my margins, so I wasn't too prepared for it. Whereas if I had been, it might have been a different story. Just having products die off's obviously the most annoying thing. Once you've put in that months of work of finding the product, building the relationship, getting the prices, and then you might be selling it for a couple of weeks, and then 20 other people start selling it. That things like that are the most daunting things, and it is quite draining. Once you've put in that work and then you think you're about to get the reward from it and you don't. I've had that happen quite a few times. I'd say that's probably the most challenging part. If not, cash flow for Amazon's quite hard as well, depending on how much you're starting out from. If you are starting with £1,000, you're going to be very reliant on Amazon paying you out that, obviously. And Amazon can usually take 2 to 3 weeks. You'll get paid every 2 weeks, but say you get paid and the payday's on a Monday, the money's not going to land in your business bank account till at least usually the Thursday. And Amazon will always take a percentage of your profit and put it into a different sort of pot, into account level reserve, just in case of any refunds or things like that. So you might actually technically should be getting paid out £10,000, but Amazon might be holding 3,000 of it, for example, and you might need that 3,000 to order new stock.
Yeah.
So just overcoming the initial sort of cash flow issues, which I ran into maybe a couple months after starting, is when I sort of found a brand and I had like 10 or so products from them. So it was quite a big increase within, a week or so. So I was just spending all the time and trying to find new credit cards to apply for, looking at how much I could pay myself from my own personal savings to put into the business, and I was still quite apprehensive at the time. I didn't want to just pile all my savings that I saved up for ages into the business. So cash flow and just dealing with products dying off with competitions, the two most daunting things with that,
Yeah.
I'd say.
I can imagine, mate. And also, you kind of touched on a little bit of the kind of profit margin, which was a question I wanted to ask. To be fair, like, what are you aiming for? I know you said 30% return on investment. Would you be aiming for a 30% profit margin on products?
Yeah, 30% profit margin on products would be great, especially after VAT registration. Usually with the return on investment, I mean, before I was VAT registered and when I was really like hammering it whilst working full time, the majority of my products were 100% return on investment, which might work out like toward closer to 30% margin. But usually about 20% margin is quite a good average for FBA, wholesale FBA, after VAT and everything like that. Whereas private labels quite a bit higher, I'd say more towards the 30%. You can get slightly higher than that, but after absolutely all expenses, VAT, Amazon fees, everything like that, 30% is a pretty good margin to aim for, which, to some people, if it's a service-based business, 30% probably sounds terrible, but just because of the scalability of it, if you're doing 30% on hundreds of thousands or a million or something like that, wouldn't mind 30% of a million.
Yeah, definitely. No, that makes a lot of sense, mate. It's interesting because I even seen a post just recently about the ice bath kind of barrels that people are like they're selling. I seen one, it was like 1.2k for like this blacked out barrel with like a step up, and it was just a plastic barrel, man. And somebody posted about it saying like the margins on this must be fucking mental, because it's just a barrel. Are those the sort of things that obviously that price will come with the brand in terms of like them being able to establish that much authority to obviously charge that much? I do understand that, but you ever kind of came across anything of that nature where you're able to see a fucking crazy margin? And also, what did that kind of feel like if you did?
Yeah, I mean, nothing of that selling point. It's always been much cheaper products. I've sold anything from like £3, like before I was VAT registered, to maybe about £30-ish would be the sort of range that I would sell products in between. You're ideally about £15 because that'll have enough margin for your fees and your VAT and everything like that. But I think the highest ROI product I've ever had, which I can't remember the exact profit margin of it at the time, was these coasters. I've spoke about them before. And it was about 340% ROI, which only worked out about like £4 profit per unit, something like that, because they were extremely cheap to buy. But just that was just, mental compared to working off 40% ROI, and now you've got 340%. Just something like that was crazy, but that was quite a while ago now. Now it is a bit harder, just with more people getting into it, it's harder to get those high margins, but they are still possible. And then you do get them a lot more with buying from China if you are doing private label. Like, I wouldn't touch a private label product or look at getting into one unless it was 100% plus, just because it's not worth it after all the investment of the trademarks, the brand and everything like that. But when I had the largest product portfolio, the majority of them were 100% ROI, and the lowest was maybe 30, but they were usually high sort of sellers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense then, mate. So in terms of like, one of the questions I actually prepped to ask you was, if you were to start over again in business, clean slate, would you go with FBA again, or would you go doing something else?
I probably would go with FBA again. I think it's been a really good learning point with just learning how to try and manage things like inventory, trying to manage cash flow, learning, pretty sort of staple things in business, pricing, things like that. Just seeing how these brands are operating. You're exposed to hundreds of brands a day if you're trying to source. I think it's a really good barrier to entry point. There's not too much risk involved, especially with wholesale. So if I was to start again, I would definitely start with wholesale. And if I didn't have as much money to start to get into wholesale, I probably would start with retail and online arbitrage. It's a good way to build up the capital I would always see it as FBA. I would use it as retail and online arbitrage, do that to build up the funds to start wholesale, use wholesale to build up the funds to do private label, then use private label to build up the funds to sort of do whatever you want.
retail and online arbitrage, that's kind of like the kind of flipping stuff that you were kind of talking about to begin with, going in and scanning stuff and stuff like that.
Yeah, you would go into sort of retailers like Home Bargains, B&M, Sainsbury's, usually go to their clearance section, walk about on app, scan things, and then usually the reduced ones will have more of a chance of selling. I've never done too much of that because I did start with wholesale, but there has been I've just saw products, even if I'd nip into Sainsbury's to grab something, I'd go check their reduced aisle, and there was a couple times like electronics is usually a good one, or sold these razors as well. Razors was a good one during COVID, or towards the end of COVID. So yeah, and same with online arbitrage, basically the same thing, but just online. So you're going to all these sort of retailers like John Lewis, anything like that online, and just going through their sort of sale section and seeing if there's anything on sale. You can obviously go on like Asda, Sainsbury's online as well, and doing that. And usually it'd be like groceries or sort of health and beauty products, something like that.
There wasn't too long ago, to be fair, where it was coming up to Christmas time, and my partner loves Funko Pops. And I found, we were in Tesco, it was in the clearance section. Don't know why, to be fair, it didn't really make sense why they were there, but it was a pack of 5 Funko Pops, which, if anyone doesn't know, Funko Pops are anywhere between like £12 to like £15, depending on how popular they actually are, for just one. And they had a pack of 5, the new kind of Star Wars Mandalorian kind of set, for like £17.50. And I remember seeing it thinking, I just can't be right, man. Like, I just can't be right. And I was like, I capitalised on it, bought one, and then I thought, I should probably buy like all of them, because like a pack of 5, that should at least come in at like, £40 to £50. But just because it's not my thing, like it's not like I would much rather dedicate my time elsewhere to the current business, for example. It wouldn't really make sense for me to do that. But would that be an example of how someone would get started in it?
Yeah, literally something like that. Toys, I don't know why I never mentioned toys. Toys are a massive one. Like Smith's is a really good shop for it. But yeah, Funko Pops, literally bang on the price. They're usually like $12.99 on Amazon, and saw tons of them. When I first started, I tried to get an account with them directly for wholesale, but no luck there. But yeah, that's like a perfect example of like retail arbitrage. And then a lot of the times, I think with the supermarkets, the reason they're selling it for so cheap is either because it's like a brand new sort of deal or launch, or they're just selling it at their cost price, or sometimes even a loss. And you're never going to be able to buy something even at wholesale, even if you're buying like 1,000, 10,000 units, you're never going to be able to get the price that Sainsbury's can get, and then for Sainsbury's to afford to take a loss on it as well. So Funko Pops is a good one.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, to be fair, because I think when I was surprised to even see that, I didn't even know Tesco even had them, to be fair, until I just randomly came across them. And I think that was probably because I was trying to understand why are they just declare? There must be a reason for it. When I checked Amazon, they were going for, I think the actual pack was like 40-ish, and I was like, surely they've like done the research on that to like see that it's still like there. So they, although I was like, they must be getting feedback of some sort to actually decide on that kind of price. And when you go to places like, there's a place in Glasgow, Forbidden Planet, it's where I go to buy any of the sort of stuff like that for my partner. And there's ones in there that sell out almost like instantly, where it was like, I guess more majority of people that wanted those things would go to directly to the source or directly to somewhere like Amazon rather than Tesco. But that was my kind of logical thought process around it.
Yeah, another one of like sort of retail arbitrage is with Prime. So like I didn't think you could buy Prime on Amazon. I've never even thought to even look, but like Sainsbury's obviously would release it, and then people would be selling it on Amazon for the sort of like wakey wine prices, like £15-20 for a bottle of Prime. They were selling on Amazon, and they were flying out on Amazon. Like you would just see, obviously because it's new and the listing was new on Amazon, someone must have just made it because it's obviously not the brand, and you would just see the software being like a dead flat line and just a massive spike as soon as they got stock. And then things with like retail and online arbitrage as well, or even wholesale, eBay is always a backup as well. So like if it's something didn't sell on Amazon, or like when I bought these 3 products and I got an intellectual property claim on them all. Basically, I thought they were one brand, they weren't. I bought a couple hundred units of each of them. One was like oven mitts. Another one was like, it was all sort of kitchen products. And I had like 200 oven mitts as my first order, 200 cleaning sponges, and then 200 cloths or something like that. Sent them into Amazon, thought these are great. These are selling too well to be too good to be true. And then I got 3 claims on my account, 3 flags on it, and then I had the 600 units. And then you can just get them sent back to you and sell them on eBay. They're not going to sell as quickly as they do on Amazon, but it's just a way to try and absorb some of your losses if you did run into any issues with that.
That makes a lot of sense, mate, to be fair, having that kind of backup opportunity to, I guess, like, not take a complete hit when something like that does go wrong. Because I was kind of curious, like, you get 100, 200 odd units and it does go south and you actually can't even sell it on there even for that kind of break-even price. Would that be the next kind of protocol?
Yeah, I'd say like the next step would be, if it was worth it, because obviously you have to pay to get them sent back to you, so it'll be about 60p per unit. If it's worth getting them sent back, then I would just try sell them on eBay, depending on what the product is, maybe Facebook Marketplace, something like that. Worst comes to worst, you might just have to absorb it and ask Amazon to liquidate it for you, and they'll just destroy it. I think I've only had that happen like a handful of times though, and it was just completely my mistake buying the wrong product and sending it in, and I had to get Amazon to destroy it. But compared to all the other products you'll be selling, like, that small loss of maybe £100, £200 to thousands in profit that month, it kind of offsets it, and it's just factors into like a cost of business, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of brings me back. One of the questions I want to ask at the beginning that I don't know how I forgot was, how quickly would you expect to see a return on something like FBA and that kind of first, set of units that you would buy?
Yeah, so as soon as you've sourced the product, which again can vary. So when I started, I probably took me a couple of weeks to find my first product. And as soon as you'd buy it, might take 2 days to get delivered to you, depending on the quantities. And then I prepped them same day, so 2 days, prepped them in 1 day to just label them, which is quite a small amount, send it into Amazon. It can vary, but it'll usually take 3 to 5 days to get into Amazon, a couple of days to check in, and then as soon as it's checked in, it'll start selling, as long as it's a wholesale product. So it could, as soon as you've sourced the product, you could start making a return on it within about a week to 10 days. It's just how long it'll take you to source a product in the first place, which I'd usually say if you started wholesale now, went through either doing it yourself or a mentorship and set everything up, got your company set up, started Amazon, started sourcing products, I'd say you could probably have a return of whatever you've invested within a month to 6 weeks, I would say. To give it a good amount of time. Anything less than that's just a bit unrealistic.
And that gives a good rough time frame, because I think when I was trying to get involved in any kind of new thing before, being in the kind of streaming side of things and coming into actual business where they're both something really tangible, when I was looking at things like Forex, other kind of different aspects, they do sell you the pipe dream of as of tomorrow you'll get your investment back almost. So it's like, fucking hell, man. And I actually think back to it, it's crazy, because I've actually still got the guy's number on WhatsApp, and he randomly just pops up sometimes where I'm thinking you're a scamming bastard, man. Thinking of how, but also taking ownership of the fact that I was just so naive to think that that's actually how easy or simple it really would be, and not even realizing that they're just sellers of they're just working in side by side with the brokers. As a result, they get paid from the brokers for every sign up. You don't even realize that they're not even
trading.
Trading.
They even know what's going on.
They don't know fuck all, man, which is, it's fucking scary.
I'd say with retail and online arbitrage, it will be a bit quicker, but then you just have to think about if you're setting up a limited company, you're going to have to set it up, which might take, a couple hours, but it's still going to be a day of, doing that. And then you're going to have to wait to get your UTR number through the post, which could take a week. Or if you're doing sole trader, it can take 2 weeks. So that's 2 weeks straight away before you're even technically legally allowed to start selling. You need to get your Amazon account set up, which can take, at least 72 hours to get approved or verified, everything like that. So that's 2 weeks and a half. And then you could go into a store and start buying it, prep it, send it in. So minimum would be 3 weeks, but that's if you already sort of knew what you were doing to an extent and just getting stuck straight into it. But if you think you could make a return, within a week to 2 weeks, or it's just not possible, unfortunately.
I know, and I think that's what majority of people are wanting in that kind of initial time frame. And I think there's a lot of things you've touched on today, and it brings back to that initial point you made, which was to deploy patience in a lot of scenarios. I think when we look at, we touched on Hormozy earlier, for example, he speaks about expanding that time horizon, where you can usually tell how successful someone is going to be by the kind of time frame that they give you on whatever deadline it might be. If the time horizon is wider on hitting a specific goal or whatever it may be, they understand that it's going to take time. It's going to take dedication, and as a result of that, expanding that kind of time horizon will inevitably return on investment far more than that quick buck in the beginning. Which I think is a hard hurdle to kind of get over to begin with, because you're wanting to get out of that scarcity mode. You're wanting to get out of that got no cash or just in a a job that maybe you're not enjoying and you don't know what the fuck to do. So as a result, you want that quick kind of cash, mate. What would be your kind of advice besides just deploying patience?
Like that's why I always think, or anything I do now, like I want to do it as quickly as possible. Not in terms of I want the money like now, but I want to start something as soon as possible so that I can see the returns as soon as possible, because I know how long it's going to take to actually see it. So I would always say, if you were like thinking about starting something, I would just start it like literally now, because then you're going to be able to see it quicker. You're going to have to know that it might take a month, it might take 2 months, it might take 6 months, however long it's going to take. But if you start in a month's time, you're now going to have to wait 7 months rather than 6. So just the sooner you start, the better. It's the same when I started private label. Like I knew this is probably going to take 2-3 months before I've found a product, trademarked it, got the branding, got the sample, got the product. Before I've even thought about trying to make a profit from it, it's going to take 2-3 months. So I may as well start it now, so that in 3 months I'm in a position where I'll be starting to hopefully see a return from it. So I'd always just try and start it as soon as possible, but just with the thought that it is going to take some time, so to just try and enjoy doing it.
Definitely. I mean, it kind of brings it back to, there was one of the lessons on one of the previous episodes from Lawrence, and I kind of took from it, which was, it doesn't matter how you start, you've just got to start. And I think like even if we look at like the network, for example, that started as just shitty networking events, man. Where in terms of, when I say shitty, I just mean like not my style. It wasn't really what I wanted to do as a kind of introvert, hosting a room, moving a room around, networking people together. It was something that had value, but I seen something so much more than that. But I wasn't able to really start to captivate that, I guess, capture that vision without just starting in the first place. I had to start with those networking events. I had to start with something that was maybe less valuable, although I brought on amazing speakers. We were able to do amazing things. But in terms of what it's evolved into now, that wouldn't have been possible without just fucking doing it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just starting. Like even when I started doing like trading and all these sort of different like ways to try and make money on the side, it's all led to doing Amazon now, and learning everything from Amazon, which I probably wouldn't have started if I never done those original things and failed at them. So that's been like 3 years to get to the point of doing Amazon to a decent point. So I think the sooner you start, the better with anything, because you'll just learn so much by actually doing it rather than thinking about doing it or trying to learn by just reading up on it rather than just trying it yourself. You're always going to learn way, even like getting a mentor, like having a mentor is just going to accelerate the process and try and help you avoid some mistakes that they've made, but you'll still learn way more by actually doing it yourself than just trying to learn something.
Doing, absolutely, mate. Just getting in the trenches, man, and just like learning as much as you possibly can. It's the best way. It's like anything, man. It's easy to kind of take the route of, like for me, I didn't want to learn sales when I first came into business, and it was my coach at the time. She was like, yeah, man, no worries. Like, if you don't want to learn sales, what are you going to do then? I'm like, I'll just hire a sales guy. And she's like, right, cool. So you're just going to hire a top quality sales guy that you're going to have to pay lesser commission because of the price of the service that you currently have. So to find a high quality sales guy at that commission level, okay, go out and find one. Then you find one, and then they get another opportunity because they're amazing and they're going to be able to generate more commissions elsewhere. What are you going to do then? And I'm like, well, I'd have to repeat that same process again, which would be really time consuming, rather than me just learning a high ticket skill like sales, and then as a result I'm able to train anyone that has got the culture and the belief and the values that I would actually require. And I think that's something that is just so valuable, mate.
Yeah, I think trying to outsource the parts that you're not good at or you don't like obviously a good thing to do, but you're not actually going to know if the sales guy's any good if you don't know sales yourself anyway, and you'll be able to train them yourself as well, which is like anyone that like I've taught Amazon to, there's been things that I know they're good at and I know things that they're not good at, because I've only mentored people that I know like personally, and it has always been one-on-one. But I just know that like my best friend that I mentored, I just knew he was just not like, he was always scared to take the risks of buying stock and everything like that, and I knew he wasn't going to be good at it. But you just need to actually do it, learn from it, and then realize that it's not actually going to be as bad as you think.
Nah, it makes a lot of sense, mate. Makes a lot of sense. In terms of any kind of advice to, say, your 19-year-old self, a good few years ago, what would be your advice to a younger Josh?
I'd probably literally I would just wish I'd started sooner. Even now saying that, I wish I'd started when I was like 17 or 18 doing Amazon. Just be like patient with it, I'd say. Don't rush into things, but try and like move forward with things as quickly as possible. As long as you're learning along the way. And I'd probably just try and learn from more people early on as well, because like when I got mentored or like had a mentor, you know, I've maybe left gaps in between that, just trying to do stuff myself, which I wasn't too good at, or I could have learned more from. So yeah, just try and learn as much as possible early on, and just get stuck into it as soon as possible. Really, I'd say.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more, mate. Paul, how are we doing for time, by the way? Awesome, mate. Perfect. Well, I think it's probably a good cue to kind of round things up in general, mate, because I think we've covered so much value today. We've touched on so many good topics, and I can always tell from a host aspect if I've not necessarily asked the right questions, but I can usually tell by my knowledge, you know, rising, that we've covered a shit ton, mate. And I think a lot of people can take a lot of value away from today in terms of people finding you, being able to consume obviously content. It's not something that you've got necessarily a lot of just now, but you are planning on getting that up. Where will people be able to find you?
FBA Josh on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I'll get some content coming out soon.
Love that, mate. And then in terms of that kind of YouTube content, you're planning on doing kind of more longer form content?
Yeah, just like sort of educational stuff, like free educational stuff about FBA, sort of showing what it's like to try and do wholesale, so sourcing, prepping products, with trying to not show the products, things like that. Same with TikTok or Instagram, just sort of short form, like educational content about FBA.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And obviously, anyone looking to get into FBA, Josh will be your man for that. Anyone that's took the time to listen to this full episode, incredibly grateful. If you're on Spotify, drop a follow, ring the bell. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, ring the bell also. And thanks, Josh, for coming on.
Thank you for listening.